Bismillah walhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. In this session, we want to focus on the pamphlet, The Preservation of Hadith, a brief introduction to the science of Hadith by Maulana Ibrahim Madani. This is a very small pamphlet, and this is the first in the series that will deal with this pamphlet. Each session won't go past a few minutes so that it is easily digested. In some cases, we will just summarize what's being said, and in other cases, we will read directly from the text. Maulana Ibrahim, may Allah forgive him and us, he begins the text by talking about the introduction to the study of Hadith as being initiated by understanding the sacrifice that the ulama of Hadith invested in preserving Hadith and communicating Hadith to us. He says the way our love for our parents is understood is by realizing the sacrifices they made for us. Likewise, our realization of how Hadith were preserved, their authority in Islam, and the work and sacrifices of the Hadith masters in the science of Hadith helps us increase our love and adoration for those who came before us, our predecessors. In addition, we will appreciate the true value of Hadith and be more scrupulous before judging a Hadith weak. It begins by quoting an ayat from the Quran. لقد من الله على المؤمنين إذ بعث فيهم رسولا من أنفسهم يتلو عليهم آياته ويزكيهم ويعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة وإن كانوا من قبل لفي ضلال مبين. Indeed, Allah has already done a favor to the believers when He raised among them a messenger from themselves to recite to them His verses, purify them, and teach them the book and wisdom. The Shaykh goes on to say, this ayah explains one of the most important responsibilities of the beloved Prophet ﷺ to teach the book. This responsibility consists not just in teaching the pronunciation and reading of the Quran, as that is covered in the first responsibility, that is to recite to them his verses. But more importantly, the meaning of the Quran is what is being entailed here, teaching the meaning of the Quran. It would be meaningless for a Muslim to try to understand the meaning and message of the Quran without the blessed Prophet ﷺ as a teacher. And he mentions an important point here. He says, proficiency in the Arabic language alone cannot help us grasp the meaning of the Quran. And actually, Shaykh al-Albani as well, different school of thought, rahimahullah, he mentions that in his books, Sifat al-Salat al-Nabi. Right? The Arabic language is not enough. And we have a movement today which is focusing on the learning of the Arabic language as a way to gain an understanding of the deen, but not understanding that the Arabic language is not enough. There has to be guidance there. Here the Shaykh brings up an important point. It's the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam who taught us. Right? And this is an indication of the necessity to have a Shaykh in the learning process. And unfortunately, in many places, this is not the case. The people are learning on their own. Without any guidance. So he says, proficiency in the Arabic language alone cannot help us grasp the meaning of the Quran. Remember, the Sahaba radiallahu anhum ajma'in who spoke fluent Arabic always turned to the blessed Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to understand the deeper meanings of the Quran. That's an indication of what? Marji'iyya to Sunnah. The referential role that the Sunnah plays in understanding the book of Allah tabarak wa ta'ala, and also understanding the role of the teacher, as we mentioned. As far as the Sunnah being that which is referred to in order to understand the Quran, that is dealt with more depth in the books of Usul al-Fiqh, with proofs and arguments as to why the Sunnah is essential to understand the Quran. The Quran's words and its meanings were explained both verbally and practically. Here, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he implemented the Quran. So the Sunnah then here is demonstrated as an implementation of the Quran. So we're not only talking about what the speech of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam as serving as a means to explain the Quran, but also his action as a way to what, to show and demonstrate how to facilitate the proper practice of the Quran. The Quran's words and its meanings were explained both verbally and practically by the Blessed Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. These sayings and explanations of the Blessed Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam are called hadith and provide us with the most authentic commentary of the Quran. Therefore, Allah's promise, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his promise to preserve the Quran meant preservation of a hadith as well. The people of hadith, the ulama of hadith, make this a point to be emphasized more than many others, that Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala preserved the Sunnah as well as the Quran. Why? Because of what was mentioned. Let's go back. And this is a simple but very profound explanation of this point. The Quran's words and meanings were explained both verbally and practically by the Blessed Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. These sayings and explanations of the Prophet, of the Blessed Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, are called hadith. But go back. The Quran's words and its meanings were explained both verbally and practically. So that shows how the Sunnah then becomes enwrapped with the reality of the Quran. And to split them apart will be what? To miss out on properly understanding the Quran and properly understanding how to implement the Quran. He gives an example. However, the preservation of words alone serves little purpose. For example, if the Quran commands Muslims to establish Salah, but we are unable to understand what this command entails, such as how to perform it, then what benefit is there in preserving the words established to Salah? Right. This proves that the preservation of the Quran by necessity includes preservation of the Hadith. Without Hadith, the Imam of a Muslim is incomplete. The Iman, of a Muslim is incomplete. After all, how do we know that the Quran is the book of Allah? If we know the Quran in its place, it is only because of the Blessed Prophet. Right? It is only because the Blessed Prophet said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this is the Quran. It is the word of Allah. So it comes back to the Sunnah again. If we were to reject this hadith, of the Blessed Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then the whole foundation of Islam collapses. We would not know that the Quran is what it claims to be. This is especially the case when we deal with the narration that's called ahad narration. Most of the ahadith are of this type. So if we were to throw them out the door, as some people try to do, given the fact that they put doubt on the authenticity and reliability of this type of transmission, then the foundation of Islam collapses. We would not know that the Quran is what it claims to be. And then he quotes the ayah, وَأَنزَلْنَا إِلَيْكَ الذِّكْرَ لِتُبَيِّنَ لِلنَّاسِ مَا نُزِّلَ إِلَيْهِمْ وَلَعَلَّهُمْ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. And we have sent unto you the message that you may explain clearly to men what is sent for them, and that they may give thought or be people of reflection. This ayah proves that the fundamental role of hadith is to reveal the meaning of the Quran, which means that the Quran cannot be understood without hadith. And the Shaykh at this point, he summarized a very profound lesson that's expanded in Usul al-Fiqh in a few words. MashaAllah. MashaAllah. يا ربنا علمنا ما ينفعنا وكن معنا ولا تكون علينا أبدا وأرزقنا باتباع السنة.